start? So I'm waiting for the live stream. And then what? I got a thumbs up. So is this better? All right. Good morning. My name is Amy Thomas, and I'm the vestry steward for adult formation and discipleship. And part of that ministry is the Forum Hour, where we are right now. And we have something really special for the Lenten series, 4 speakers from Virginia Theological Seminary. And these 4 people are quite a testament to the relationship between Immanuel Church on the Hill and Virginia Theological Seminary. Today we have the Reverend Dr. Molla. She comes to us via her first ministries in Ethiopia, where she also began her academic career. From there, she and a family went to Denver, and from Denver, where she received her Master of Divinity degree, and then to Virginia Theological Seminary, where she now teaches and researches and writes. The Reverend Dr. Molla has won many, or been awarded many accolades for her research and writing. We are truly honored to have you here with us today to share with us on your expertise. One which is listed in the bulletin, if you'd like to see, the spirituality of children and families, her interdisciplinary approach to the intersections of lived religion, and even more, which intersects very well with our series, Walking the Walk. Please welcome Dr. Molla.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am so pleased to be here with you today. Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. My family, my husband, Andreas Assen, and my daughter, Halit Andreas, they are also with us to share our faith with you and also to listen from you. That's why we are here today. So when I heard about this presentation, the series you have for the Lent season, I was actually excited, and I was so moved because I feel like what you are planning to do now and here is so important for the life of the church here and for the life of the church in the global church. Today I am trying to speak with you about the importance of practicing our faith for the sake of children's spirituality. So mostly when we think about faith formation, we are thinking about us, but what we are doing also impacts how children live and form, construct, and reconstruct their identity. So your decision, the conversation you are having right now is not only important, but essential for the formation of children's spirituality. So as Amy mentioned, my expertise is on lived religion, the spirituality of children and families, and practical and pastoral theology. So I want to give you the overview why lived religion, or the conversation you raised here, is important. So in my expertise, when I study religion, I learned that there was already a conversation in the United States, a need for religious practices than normative beliefs or norms. That's happening right now and here. So there are so many conversations. One of the emphases for the need for lived religion comes from people. They need to address the emotion, what's going on in their inside their bodies, their feelings, what's going on in their life. And that approach for religion is called the psychology of religion, because people want to know and feel inside. So it's not religion what they hear in the church, but what they feel inside is important for them to relate to the sacred, to relate to God. So some people are emphasizing, okay, for me, religion is not actually norm, belief, theology. Religion is for me my feeling. So I want to nurture and empower my feelings. So people focus on their feelings, their psychological needs. They go to therapy, they do so many embodied practices and experiences so that they can feel good inside. And when they good feel inside, when their feelings are good, they can do good in the world. So that trajectory is called the psychology of religion. And there is another trajectory for lived religion. And in that experience or that approach for religion is called personal experience for lived religion. And that's mainly in the evangelical tradition in the United States than the mainline tradition that you and I are part of. I'm a Lutheran from the Evangelical Church America. So the evangelicals are focusing in the personal experience they have with Jesus Christ. So they emphasize accepting Jesus Christ as their personal savior. That's how they start their relationship. And then they focus on praying, going to church, visiting other members, or especially for Pentecostal, praying in tongues, coming in communities, going and evangelizing. So their relationship with God is not again this norm or this belief, but what they do. Doing is important. Okay, I have personal relationship with God. This personal relationship is going to be practiced. But what I'm going to do, I need to pray. I need to read the Bible maybe 3 times a day. I need to go and visit people. I need to evangelize people. And that experience mediates how they feel God's presence in their life in the everyday. And that trajectory is called the personal experience of lived religion. And there are other people in the United States this day, they focus on the everyday religion. This everyday religion people are called spiritual. They don't want to be called religious, but they want to be called spiritual because they think that these religious organizations are not providing the right tools for them to engage to the world, because they want to engage with the world in the everyday. So their rule is coming from the golden religion, from the golden truth. So do good for your neighbor, right? So they are engaged in political and social issues, ethical issues for their communities, for their people. So by being engaged in social change, in political change in the everyday, by doing good for their neighbors, they want to practice their religion. And that trajectory is called everyday religion. And these people, if you talk to them, they tell you they are spiritual, but they are not religious. They are not coming to church, but they believe in doing something good for their neighbors. And there is another trajectory of religion. And these days we are living in the global world, and media is so powerful. So some people are focusing on the media, on the podcasts, in the television programs, big TV preachers, very known preachers, in order to construct their religious views. Not only to learn about religion, but to demonstrate how they live their religions, they use the media. For example, some people, if you go to YouTube or if you go to Facebook or Twitter, people post not only their political view, but they post about their religious view. They are posting, they are resisting social injustice, political injustice, what they believe about God, what they believe about neighbors, what they believe about their country and nation. And that is how they practice their religion in the everyday. So it's the media and also the need of the communities is shaping how people are living and practicing their religion. So the other trajectory of how people are forming and practicing their religions these days in the 21st century is aesthetics. This, like, it's art, like people are creating their own art, their own way of doing religion in the everyday. And this trajectory is mainly for African Americans, because African Americans, their religion, their culture, their history was destroyed because of colonization and slavery. So in the United States, these communities, these ethnic groups, people of color or people who came to the United States migrating, because of political reasons, because of social reasons, they are creating their religious spaces. They are practicing their faith by creating different arts. For example, for African Americans, so many religious scholars are saying the way they preach. Their dance, their music defines how they practice their religion in the everyday. So of course, African Americans are Christians. They are taking Christianity and the scripture, but they are fashioning that religion in a way that can create memory for them, for their culture in the United States, in the new country, in the new culture. So that's how they are living their identity in the new world. So the reason I am mentioning these trajectories in the United States these days, the psychology of religion, people, they want to feel good inside in their feelings, and that feeling is creating, how they function in the world. That's their religion. For others, it's the everyday. For evangelicals in the United States, praying, reading the Bible, going to the church, being active and engaged in the church. That's how they are defining their religion. And for others, it's the everyday. Religion is not anymore beliefs or static norms, but how they live and walk in the everyday. So instead of coming to the church, they prefer to do good by calling themselves spiritual. And for others, it's the media, listening podcasts, known preachers. That's how they construct their everyday religion and practice. And for others, it's art. So I think the question is, you are here today to discuss about religion, not only how you believe, but how you walk, the faith you have in the everyday. So there is a need already in this country. People need a religious trajectory or a religious tradition that can provide a space for them to practice their religion. How can you and I enable others outside by practicing our faith in the everyday? How can our religion, our faith tradition, in the mainline tradition in the United States, be more engaged in communities, be engaged in forming and shaping our practice in the everyday, instead of just being, okay, I'm going to church every Sunday and that's my religion. So I don't want to stop the conversation there. I'm the director or the chair for spirituality of children and families in Virginia Theological Seminary. So I also believe and claim that our practices, what we do in the everyday in our family, what we do in the everyday in our community, what we do in the everyday in the schools, in public and political spaces, inform and shape how children construct their spirituality. So there are different understandings about the spirituality of children. For example, I'm a Lutheran, and in Lutherans and Episcopal and some denominations, they baptize children, right? So for them, the spirituality of children begins from God's love, from baptism. And for others, they bless children. They say that, okay, children, they have agency, they have God's image, but we will baptize them later after they confirm their faith. That's okay, right? That's also another trajectory, another way of understanding tradition. And for others, they have, maybe they baptize, they don't baptize. They live both of these trajectories. So I don't want to spend time saying, okay, baptizing children is right, or not baptizing children is wrong. I think God has a way to accept and to nurture children wherever they are. They are baptized. If they are not baptized, I believe the Holy Spirit will guide them to live their faith. But I want to emphasize about our role. How can we create a space that nurtures the spirituality of children in our denomination, in this congregation? So for me, my spirituality begins in my family. So the research I'm doing at Virginia Theological Seminary, the research I'm doing related to the spirituality of children comes from my lived religion. That lived religion was shaped by my parents. My father was a pastor, my mom was working full-time, so my spirituality was shaped by their faith. my mom and dad, they encourage me to read the Bible every day, to pray in the morning before I go to church, to go to church every day, right? Going to the church, being active and engaged in youth group, in choir, in different programs in the church. So it's not only my parents, but my Sunday school teachers and also the community taught me to respect adults, to care for the poor and the oppressed, to respect religious and political norms and rules. I learned this all from the community. It's not only my parents, but my parents, my grandmother, my aunties, the community shaped my faith practices. Of course, the teachers in elementary school, my teachers in junior school, they also empowered me, nurtured me to live my religion. So the research I'm doing right now is to find ways for congregations and for churches to nurture the children's spirituality, children's agency beyond like Sunday school class. For many churches, children's spirituality is nurtured just in ceremonies, Sunday school program in the church. So my argument is no, children's spirituality is beyond that. Children's spirituality begins at baptism, gets nurtured of course through Sunday school, but their relationship with their parents in the everyday, their relationship at the school, their relationship in the community, their relationship in culture impacts how they live and form their spirituality. So I want you to think, when you think about walking your faith, that's also a step you are making to nurture your children. When you walk your faith, your children will start walking their faith, because they learn by seeing you. If you are coming to church, they come. If you pray, they pray. If you read your Bible, they read. If you go and evangelize, they evangelize. If you invite people, they invite people. If you go and visit people, they visit people. So practicing your faith is not only for you. Practicing your faith is for your children. So it's at the same time, as I mentioned, the media impacts children's spirituality. It's not only what you do, the media also impacts children's spirituality. The culture, our culture, political and social issues also impacts children's spirituality. Their body and embodied experience impacts children's spirituality and culture. So when we think about children's spirituality, we need to think about religion, what we believe, what we practice, and how it's also interacting with culture and the broader political and social realities. So this conversation is important also for nurturing children's spirituality. So these are the issues I want to raise, and I want to open for conversation, and I'm open to hear the questions you have and continue these same issues I just raised here. I don't want to speak the whole time.
You talked a lot about our lived religion and children's spirituality, and how children are watching at home and taking on and imitating those spiritual disciplines of the family. Well, some of us don't have children here at the church, so how can we be a part of that?
Yes. So, yes, thank you so much for this question. So for me, children are for all. That's why the reason I'm mentioning that my spirituality, for example, in my lived religion was not only shaped by my parents, by my aunties and grandmother, by my neighbors, by the people in my congregation, right? By my parents' friends I met in the church, the people I met when I was going to the market or walking to the school, people who greet me, say, "Hi, Rode." I still remember most of the people who greet me on the way or just say hi to me, ask me about my parents. Those old people, their kindness, their faith, their spirituality shaped who I am and my faith. And when I call to my mom, I always ask her, how is that person, because I remember those waves and connections, right? So I'm encouraging you now to think when you practice your faith, it impacts the children. So I'm not thinking only you having your own baby. I'm thinking you practicing your faith for the sake of children in your community, for the sake of children in your congregation, for the sake of children in your family. You are maybe aunt or maybe, in other extended family. I'm thinking about that. And I'm thinking about children in the United States and the global church, right? So the practices you are making here will impact children in Ethiopia, children in Africa, children in Asia. So we are living in this connected way. So I'm not thinking only a mother and my child. I'm thinking me with my child. I'm thinking me, children in this community. I'm thinking me, children in the United States and children in the global church and in the global world. So that's why I'm raising issues from my own lived experience to show you how I was formed and encouraging you to think how your faith and your practice will impact the life of one child here and the life of one child in Ethiopia or in other parts in the world. Yes.
Hi, thank you for coming and speaking to us. Really nice to have you here and your family. So here in this church, we've had in the past really strong kind of children, youth, family, and whole lifespan education. And I think during COVID, a lot of that had to go, take a break. Although some really good work by some really faithful people continue doing video of godly play and really trying to reach out to children, youth, and families. So I believe we might be in this parish at a point where we could look at what is the whole set of offerings for children in our church from youngest to, as they're growing up. And I'm wondering if you have any comment or suggestion on elements that could be considered as we possibly look at that over the next year. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you. That's a good question. So my comment is when we think about practicing our faith, so of course educating our faith is important. So when we create like this kind of programs, we always think, okay, we need to educate children so that they know their faith, okay? But I'm thinking right now when I share lived religion, I'm thinking more, of course, educating children is important, but I'm thinking about the agency of children. So children will not only get being educated for ceremonies or an hour in the church, but how can we start seeing children in the body of Christ, being agents, active participants, not only receivers. And that will be in conversation, in teaching, in conversation as practicing our faith so that children can imitate that. So of course, education is important, but I don't want churches to think education as the only way that they can nurture the spirituality of children. So that's my comment. Of course, we need godly play. I'm advocating for that. We need holistic curriculums in our churches. We need to have a strong Sunday school. But sometimes people forget that the political issue, what's going on in the world, cultural issues, and how we practically engage in the everyday, how those things are impacting the spirituality of children. So I want you to, this congregation, to think holistically about that. How are we evangelizing? How are we praying as a parent? Or how are we as a person, like Amy mentioned, how am I thinking about my faith in the everyday being a tool for God to nurture that child? So this kind of thing, I want this kind of thinking to emerge from this congregation. So that's what's going to help children. I memorized so many verses. I was raised like in a Christian family, going to Sunday school, but that is not the only thing that nurtured my spirituality. It's the life of my parents, it's the life of the congregation, it's the life of the community, and it's this way, right? So it's integrated. But sometimes if we think, okay, I'm nurturing the spirituality of children by having just this Sunday school program, that's not helping us. People are going out and people are not staying in church. But I think what's helping us to stay in church is practices. So we need to move from only educating to practicing. So I think you need to think as a church how you can create children's choir so that children start singing. You know, how can you engage children in different programs in your congregation so that the children will be not only receivers but participants, right? So sometimes, you know, we have different programs for our children, maybe like in Christmas season, and it's just disconnected. How can we have a church that's fully engaging children, you know, throughout the year, you know, children being engaged in being acolytes, maybe reading the assigned texts for the day, and actively coming to the church, and when they go back, you know, maybe educating them, empowering them to share their faith, not in a way that colonizes other or, you know, make the other feel excluded, but in a way that invites compassion and love and empathy. So we need to think about practices than, you know, teaching them for 30 minutes. So that's my comment, more, you know, considering the agency of children and their spirituality in the everyday. As a parent, as the member of this congregation, as a pastor, we need to think that way. Because like it's not working. Just educating for children for 30 minutes is not working, and children or youth, and, you know, when they become adults, they are not staying in church. So that means we need to change, not to compete with other religions. You know, our faith. For me, why I don't understand why we focus on education. Christianity is about practicing. Right? It's about praying, it's about sharing, it's about caring for the poor, it's about justice and equality. I don't know how and when Christianity became just its belief here, and it doesn't engage with the world. So it's just living our faith. Our faith is about doing. It's not just beliefs that is written and we come and educate that for 30 minutes. For us and including children. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you very much for joining us here today. I really appreciated the way you described the different trajectories of how we worship or how communities can worship. And one of the things that I think a lot about is children, as they get older, they're exploring new ways of worshiping. How important is it for us to provide access to different types of worshiping in the Christian faith? But you described very different traditions, all equally with no judgment. I really appreciated that. Like, should we be thinking about how do we help our children explore just different ways of worshiping, whether it's through music, through media, through just different traditions? I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I think the reason I mentioned the psychology of religion, individual, like personal experience, and religion in the everyday, and media and aesthetics is these are the things that are attracting our communities these days. People need a religious trajectory that's focused in feelings, right? People are really interested in psychological healing. They want their feeling to be calm and nurtured, right? And some really think it's important for me to engage in communities. So that's important. I think you have that program. You know, I live down at Zabraski Drive, and I see the pumpkins and all. Even my baby was, after even that passed, Halita was saying, I need pumpkin, because we were just seeing that every day. So I think it's in her brain. Now just walking, she says, she's 2 years old, but she says, pumpkin, I need pumpkin, mommy, because it was there. It impacted how she's seeing things, right? So it's like thinking all these things. Some people are interested in bodies and embodied religious practices, right? So music, worship style, art, right? So people want to create and recreate their religious practices, right? So if we think that how we define God, how we view God, in the Western and hegemony culture is going to work for everyone, that's not going to work, even not only for black and brown children, but children now in this generation, right? So I think it's important for churches to open up. How can we provide space for children, for youth, for the new generation and black and brown children, so that they can use their bodies and embody the experience, their lived experience, to construct their religion, their theology, now and here. So that could be music, that could be dance, that could be visual art. So I heard about the music, the choir in Asbury University use word like singing for 3-4 days. I see that being posted on Facebook. It's in the universities, just some kind of kids, university students start singing, and they keep doing that because they feel and they sense something beyond, like the every day they start to feel God in that singing. So I think I can't say this is it or this is how you do it, but I believe as a practical theologian, churches, congregation need to discern ways that can empower and nurture the spirituality of children and all of their members. And it's important to be open for bringing diverse voices, diverse experiences, not for the sake of just, we are inclusivist in this church, right? But for real engagement with those communities, for real engagement for children, for real engagement for youth in this congregation and beyond. I think that's needed, required in this church. Yeah, and thank you for raising that question, and I think we need to keep asking that and find ways that can bring us to a place we feel okay. I think we are doing the right thing now and here. Yeah, so thank you. Hi.
There we go. Thank you for being here, Rhoda. It's wonderful to hear your talk and your thoughts. I was thinking about the journey of faith and the concurrent journey of doubt and questioning, especially in the lives of young people. I've seen that questioning and doubt period being an important phase in my experience and those close to me to deepening. And I wonder if you could talk about that from your experience, especially cross-culturally, how you've seen that play out in different parts of God's church around the world and the different ways we can be attentive and foster that.
Deepening of experience?
The role of doubt and questioning in the deepening of faith.
Questioning.
Mm-hmm. Doubt and faith and questioning.
Yeah, so I think, so that's a good question. The reason I'm saying it's a good question is questioning is always important because for me, I was born and raised in Ethiopia, and my father was the first convert of the missionaries, right? So he was practicing the faith tradition for the Western context, right? So in some ways that was, for me, life limiting, right? So because the missionaries came to Ethiopia, they start practicing Christianity in the Ethiopian context, but most of the norms and the practices were Western. They were not integrated in our culture, right? So going to the seminary, I start to think about more of constructing theologies that are culturally appropriate, not only appropriate, contextual theologies for me in Ethiopia, in the Ethiopian context. Then I came here to the United States and I start to see the importance of diversity. I start to see who I am, why my theology, my voice is needed. So that also shaped me as a person, as a scholar, moving not only, from that religious tradition that I received from my parents, but now I'm moving from that culture, from that identity, not to learn, not only to keep that, but to learn from others. And that experience informed me to see the God that's also open and inclusive for others, for people who look like me and people who are also different from me. So I think it's always important to be in conversation with our lived religion, and also, you know, with our theological norms and practices. And then I call that a working theology, because theology for some people is static, you know, but for me, you know, I have my scripture, my tradition, and my lived experience informs how I read religion, my scripture, and that informs my practice. And my practice informs how I live in the world, and that again informs how I read the Bible. And the Bible informs how I do and live in the world. It's always like that. It's not like here and here. It's like a circle for me. So I think the experience I brought from Ethiopia is still with me, but it's being informed by the new culture and new experiences I'm receiving here. But I'm not only receiving my culture, my family, you know, the community I was raised is again informing how people are living in this country. I'm bringing more of the community aspect of me in this culture, right? So I'm challenging my students to think as a community, right? People in this country focus on individual freedom, individual thinking, focusing on one person's experience. So I'm challenging my students to think as a community. It's not only you, it's not only your freedom, the values of your community matters. So how can we start to think as a community, not only as an individual? Because that individual freedom is ignoring the other. But when we start to think as a community, we start to think about others. And that shapes how we think about our faith and our practices. So I think it's like giving and receiving and being shaped and informed in that. So I think in that way, because of my experience, I'm blessed, because I was born and raised in Ethiopia, I studied here, and I lived in different places. These all are coming together to shape me as a scholar and a theologian here, as a teacher. Yeah, yes.
I think this is on. Thank you for your talk. It's very enlightening. I truly appreciate you bringing a different perspective and talking a little bit about your background in Ethiopia. I have some specific questions about that. Can you tell us a little more about your Mekane Jesus evangelical faith and Lutheran faith, and also directed a little bit towards children here, because we're dealing with a problem that I don't know that we have really acknowledged to ourselves, and that is gun violence. We have widespread gun violence. Our children are being affected in schools. As a father, I have to talk to my children for the first time in my life about how to deal with gun violence and how to have faith and spirituality in a situation where they could go to school and there could be a shooting, and that happens every day on college campuses. So it's something that we haven't dealt with before, at least those of us over here, and it's also something that I don't know that we've acknowledged is such a big problem. Now, I know you're originally from Ethiopia, and I'm originally from India. We have different problems. You have poverty, you have famine, and we deal with those problems over there. But I would, since you're somebody who straddles two cultures, I would be interested in your advice for those of us who are dealing with a very real problem of gun violence, and we have to teach our kids how to deal with that from a position of faith.
Yes. So I think for me, the gun violence issue, so my faith in the Mekane Jesus Church is like the faith I just mentioned. You know, my faith in the Mekane Jesus Church was integrated with my family, with my culture, with my Sunday school teachers, and my theological education in Ethiopia. So that's still part of me, but it's in conversation with who I am right now. And who I am right now is also in conversation with my identity in the Mekane Jesus Church. So what I'm saying, it's not static. I'm not saying, okay, I'm only Mekane Jesus. You know, I'm Mekane Jesus, and now maybe I'm Mekane Jesus and ELC. I'm ordained in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. So I'm ELC, I'm Mekane Jesus, and maybe I'm Episcopalian in some ways, because I'm living and worshiping in this tradition every day. So what matters is for me the practice. You know, I'm practicing and worshiping in this chapel So the liturgy, I'm so in ELSA is in full communion with ELSA. I'm using the liturgy. Even I can use that to serve, to minister others. So I'm not only Mechanismus or ELSA, maybe I'm Episcopalian. So hybridity is important, for me. I'm a post-colonial scholar. So when we live in the post-colonial context, what we need to acknowledge is our hybridity, right? So you were born and raised in India, you live here, you are raising your kids in this context. So the world is divided, our political systems are divided nowadays in the United States because people are thinking in a black and white context. People are white or maybe black, right? But for me, identity is always being questioned, right? Identity is always in conversation with what's going on in the world. So I think that will lead us to the challenge of gun violence, right? So it's a political issue, but that's impacting the lives of children and families in the United States. So I think people, we as a faith, as believers, we need to speak for that. So I don't think it's the problem of children, it's the problem of us, how we think about us being human. So what's the meaning of being human, right? So if people think that they need something to protect their identity, they need gun. So gun is everywhere, available for everyone. So some people can use that for good things, others may use it to kill children. And that's has impact in you. I'm scared every day when I send my baby to the daycare, right? Because I don't know who's gonna go there and use that gun. We don't know, we don't have control for that. But I think it's again, who we are as a community here in this congregation. What are we believing? What's the meaning of being human, right? Why do we need gun? So I think we need to articulate that theologically. We need to preach about that. We need to educate people about that, right? So, and that's going to impact how politicians make decisions, discern ways that can protect the lives of children in the everyday. So it's all integrated. So for me, I think it's again lived. How are we living our faith? How is that faith impacting the decisions that if you become a politician, it's you who is going to make that decision. How is your faith impacting your decision? It's all integrated. So if we start living our faith, I don't think gun will be a problem. If there is no faith, for example, we discuss about psychology of religion. People who are scared, anxious, right, who do not have good emotional feelings may feel anxious and nervous and feel rejected and go and use that gun to kill others. But when religion becomes life-giving, when people feel liberated from mental health or from emotional problem, they are not going to use that gun because they feel healed. When religion becomes practical in the everyday, people feel accepted and nurtured in political and public spaces, maybe we have more youth who are fruitful and effective in public and political spaces. So I think it's all integrated. It's about faith and practice.
You've taken some tough questions. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
I didn't actually have a question. I just had a comment that what you said resonates so deeply with me because I was raised in a household where religion was not terribly important, and we went to church off and on. But my grandmother was deeply religious and read the Bible every day, and she did it in front of us. I mean, no matter what was going on, she was reading her Bible or saying her prayers, or she was going to church, and if you were there, you had to go too. And so I just want to reiterate how what you said reinforced that for me, how important it is, even if my kids don't seem interested, or I can't drag them to church, it's still important for me to read my Bible in front of them and say my prayers in front of them and tell them where I'm going. I just thank you for that. It's a reminder how it is so much more about, how we can reach other people out there.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Yeah. And about the gun violence, I'm going to teach a course this coming fall, pastoral care for at-risk children. So in that class I'm going to discuss, we are going to learn about, of course, poverty. We are going to discuss about gun violence. So I'm going to create this awareness for my students. You know, it's practical. You know, those who have kids are really facing this challenge every day, and so you are welcome to come in that class, and you know, maybe share your experience or learn. I know he's a board member. You are BTS. Yeah. So I'm teaching a course this fall called Pastoral Care for At-Risk Children. So in that class, we are going to discuss about poverty and gun violence. So this fall, yeah. So I would love to have you there in that class, maybe to share your experience for the students. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What? You grew up a Christian in Ethiopia. I mean, my father graduated from this school, but I'm a derelict student. I'm a typical preacher's kid, which means I don't readily accept everything, right, that my father was teaching. However, how many Christians are in Ethiopia? I mean, is it the predominant religion, or is it a minority, persecuted religion by its government, say, or what?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there are two kinds of Christianity in Ethiopia. One is the Coptic religion, and that was like there for years, maybe for 2,000 years. Christianity came to Ethiopia early, so it was integrated in Ethiopia's history. So, you know, for me, there is no Ethiopia without Christianity, because like the emperors were there for years, and you know, the church was assigning the emperor, and it was always there. And me, I wasn't raised in that tradition, and the missionaries came later. They came to Ethiopia because there were parties, the parties not evangelized by the Coptic Christianity, so they went to evangelize those areas, and again came to different parties. Like I was from the northern part of Ethiopia, where the Coptic Christianity is very dominant, but they still were evangelizing. So my dad was evangelized, and I was a minority. So always, like for me, especially in the southern and western parts of Ethiopia, other ethnic groups, ethnic tribes, Western, like missionaries' religion is at least equal or have more power. But for me, in my hometown, I was always the minority and persecuted a lot, because people think I'm worshiping a different God, a God from West. So they think they want me to be Ethiopian and worship their God, you know. So it was always challenging for me. So, you know, that's why I really appreciate me coming here to the United States. I the first time felt, oh my God, these are my people. So I didn't feel, you know, minority religiously here.
So, you know, in terms of children learning religion, it's really a family issue. Because I'm thinking of
family is important. It's not only families. I'm thinking, like, for me, family is, you know, I'm defining families in many ways, because if we define family narrowly, it's so problematic. You know, we are living, you know, in a postmodern world. There are different definitions for families, but I think how we live that family life is important. If we define families, you know, two moms, maybe two dads, maybe a mom and a dad, maybe families as a group, and family also in congregations. You know, congregations can be a place where people feel, okay, this is my place, this is where I belong, these are my family. And some people these days may feel rejected by their parents. They feel, you know, emotionally colonized or emotionally unheard by their parents, and they may call their pastors, you know, as a parent or as a family. That's important. So I think we need to define families broadly. Who are my family? For me, family is a place I feel nurtured, accepted, recognized as who I am as a person. So is that church? So that it could be church family, it could be you, it could be Amy, anyone. that accepts me as I am, as a person, that's my family.
Yeah, because what concerns me is in this country, it's extremely diverse.
Very.
This country is so diverse that even the founding fathers realized church and state should be separate. Because otherwise, religious governments would cause even more strife or less freedom. You know, so it's, that's why I said that my father taught me, I look at morals with religion, you know, and my father had always said that, son, if your daughter doesn't have any morals by the time she's 13 years old, it's too late. She's already formed certain beliefs.
Yeah.
So I think this issue is a heck of a lot more complex in America, which is, you know, people think it's just a cliche, but it is a melting pot. And it can be a dangerous melting pot because not everybody thinks like Christians here, and they will assert their beliefs even violently. So it's that's why I think your course and everything is very much needed, and I hope it helps a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this affirming word. Yes.
All right, well, I guess we should say thank you for being with us. And a big welcome to Alexandria.
Yes. Thank you.
And everybody, we have Dean Markham with us next week after the forum. It's for the forum.